Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Wonder Series. So have you ever wondered what life would be like if you looked at it from another perspective? What could you learn by opening your mind to other ideas and concepts? Who would you become if you welcomed possibilities and embraced new opportunities? And then ultimately, how would that allow you to live the healthy, happy life that you've always wanted, one in which you are flourishing? Hi, everyone. I'm Denise Siegel. I am your host here of the Wonder Series, where we offer you the weekly opportunity to think outside the box and wonder how you can live differently, live healthfully, and happily. The Wonder Series is sponsored by livinghealthylist.com. Here on our weekly interviews, we feature world-class experts in various areas of health, wellness, personal development, and bringing a little bit of fun back into life, all who inspire you with their insight and their wisdom. And here you will receive tips and proven strategies, which is so important, that you can use right away. Here you will be excited, we will engage you, we will educate you, but most importantly, we are going to empower you to make some decisions that help you live that life you've always desired. You can find us here. The Wonder Series is released every Wednesday, 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. And you can find us on Spotify, on Google, on YouTube, on Facebook, on any of those platforms that you listen to or watch your favorite podcasts. And if you like what you hear, please subscribe and give the Wonder Series a 5-star rating. And while you're at it, please let your friends know about us too. So without any further ado, welcome to the Wonder Series, where we ask you to start wondering so you can start living. This month, we're talking about men's health, women's health, and a little bit of both, how they actually, men's health and women's health, we think they're different, but there's so many ways that they are absolutely connected. So I'm really excited to talk to my guest today. My guest is Dr. Kate Steiner, and I'm going to read her bio because I think it's really, really important that you get to understand who she is before she starts chatting. So Dr. Kate Steiner is a burnout recovery strategist, consultant, speaker, and CEO of Lift Wellness Consulting. She supports professionals in overcoming the burden of burnout through a proven, which is important, reflection and development process. Holding a master's of counseling and a Ph.D. in counselor education and supervision, her practice is grounded in the research-based Steiner self-reflective sustainability and wellness, SSRSW, model. I like the idea that all of this is research-based. As a lifetime researcher in wellness and burnout, Dr. Steiner is the authority of Feeling Crispy, a guide to burnout recovery. And she's also the host of From Burnout to Recovery show with Dr. Kate. Her mission is to end the burnout cycle for professionals so they, I love this, so they are living healthier and happier. Oh, by the way, Feeling Crispy, we're going to talk about that a little bit in a minute. Dr. Kate, hi, how are you today?
I am so great. Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. It's great to have you here. I know you and I are connected in another circle. And it's been, I've been really looking forward to chatting with you one-on-one.
Yeah, me too.
So tell us a little bit, this is a really cool bio. Tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are today. There were a couple of steps here, but how did it all kind of transpire?
Yeah. So really, I came to do the work that I do today in burnout recovery through my own experience with burnout. So I believe that we all have an experience and a story when it comes to burnout, when we realize like what burnout actually is. And for me, it was about 10 years ago. And I was finishing up the coursework for my PhD. I was working in higher education and student affairs. I actually worked predominantly with our fraternities and sororities on the college campus that I was at. So I had a lot of evenings, at work. I had a lot of weekends at work. I had just a high stress job, if you can imagine, just, working with 18 to 22-year-olds and their decision-making process in that aspect.
To do that.
Yes. I loved the work, but it was definitely challenging in a lot of ways. in addition to those two things, I was also in a really unhealthy relationship at the time. And so all of these things just created kind of this hard life. Things just felt really hard. And I found that looking back, I became almost the worst version of myself. So I had lost the joy in my life. I had lost like the playfulness that I was known for, that people, wanted to interact with me for. Instead, I could access sadness or anger. And that's kind of the two emotions that really ran my life. And I had already been researching wellness and burnout for a long time as part of my career in that time, and didn't recognize that what I was experiencing was burnout. And it was a conversation with my mom where she was just kind of like, where's my daughter? Like, where's this human that, I know and love is in there somewhere? And recognizing that I needed some professional help to get out of that space, but taking what I did with the work with my professional counselor and interviewing other people in their recovery from burnout, that's what led me to develop the model that you noted in my bio. And because I did the research as part of my dissertation, that's why it got a very long title with my name attached to it. So really, it's just looking at burnout in the aspect of what is it and how do we identify it? How do we observe it? How do we prepare for it? And what is our recovery method?
I think it's interesting that you were studying in health and wellness
Yeah.
and didn't recognize it in yourself. And I think that
Yeah.
so many of us can see it in other people, but
Mhm.
never recognize it in ourselves.
Yeah. And that is a really important thing. And one of the things that I first, in working with people in connecting and in speaking on stages and those kinds of things, is really talking about what does that look like for
Mhm.
you? So what does burnout look like? What are the other words that you use to describe what's happening for you when you are actually in burnout? So for a lot of people, it's exhaustion, overwhelm. I'm really tired. I'm fatigued. I'm working for the weekend. It's those when I get to statements, right? When I get to the end of the day, when I get to the end of this project, when I get to the weekend, when I get to the holiday, when I get to vacation, and we're running on kind of those fumes until we get to that spot where we give ourselves permission to slow down instead of giving ourselves the space to do that throughout our day.
I can see that. My nephew and his girlfriend were just on a vacation. They took a 10-day vacation and they just got back, and already they're going back to reality. And you can just hear in their voices like they had a great time. They kind of kicked off their shoes literally because they were in Florida and had a great time. But now getting back to kind of the everyday grind.
Mhm.
And I think that's what a lot of us think of, like that, because that we're just always going and doing and moving
Yeah.
forward. And you
Yeah.
make a good point that if we don't step back every day and kind of give ourselves that space, how do we do that when we're working, in a company with other people? How do we step back and give ourselves that space?
Yeah. So a couple of those things that come into play is really what is part of the preparation phase in my model. And so one of those things is recognizing what I call burn events. So burn events are these daily circumstances, activities. It could be a meeting, it could be an interaction with, a human that you may find to be difficult, but essentially they cause us to feel overwhelmed, fatigued, and emotionally drained. So they're the things that create stress and stress responses in our lives. And we have burn events that are expected. So we can actually look at our calendar and note when these are going to occur. We can look and say, oh, I have that meeting scheduled with my supervisor that I'm a little nervous about. So recognizing when these things are coming up for us and then preparing for them. So do you need to, is there something you can do for yourself before that meeting that will support you in just feeling, a little more even keel when you go into it? Water intake can be a big thing, like just making sure you're getting enough water throughout those busy days, and, setting a reminder on your watch to, drink water, or when my watch tells me to stand up every hour or so. So when that goes off, also drinking some water or something to that effect. but then having planned recovery after those moments. And it doesn't have to be big and long, but it's just maybe something between 2 and 5 minutes, quick, maybe breathing exercise or reflecting on the meeting or getting outside, going for a quick walk, or even just, standing up, walking away from your computer for a moment, taking a few deep breaths is an important piece. The other thing with preparation that is really important for us throughout our workday is that establishment of boundaries. So really considering, what is it that I need in my day to show up as my best self, to be my happiest, healthiest self in whatever that looks like for that day. And then creating space and establishing those boundaries by letting other people know around me what those expectations are. So that's the key in boundaries, right? So we all have expectations. We all have an expectation for how we want other people to treat us. The setting of the boundary is actually letting them know and teaching them that expectation.
I think that's a very good point, because we set boundaries and then we get aggravated when people kind of cross those boundaries, but we haven't actually let them know what they were.
Right. Yeah. So I often say, I was like, if you don't communicate that expectation to people, what you end up with is an unmet expectation every time.
Very true. I mean, a closed door is a pretty good boundary.
Yes.
If your door is wide open and you haven't told people from this time to this time, I'm working on a project, don't bother me, and they walk in and you get aggravated.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kind of unfair to that person.
Yes.
So burnout events, I can definitely see this, especially, I'm thinking back, about working in corporate. I don't miss that. But there was always those times, the Monday meeting after, after we'd have, so I was a corporate event planner. So a Monday meeting after we'd had a long weekend, I'm tired from the weekend. I had to fly home, and there's always that addition, the travel piece.
Yes.
And then to have to sit there at Monday morning at a meeting. I never really thought of it in this way before, but I realize now how those events, because there were a lot of them, really led to what I now recognize as burnout. I thought I was fed up with the job. I was fed up with the people that I worked with. And to look back now and say, maybe it was more internal. External factors for sure.
Absolutely.
So I guess let's talk about some of those, more of those external factors. Burnout in job, but what other events, in what other areas do people feel burnt out in their world?
Yeah. So I think you said it perfectly, in that we often attach burnout, or the idea that we're burning out, simply from our job or career in that aspect, or, the work in that piece. But I have worked with individuals who were experiencing burnout as parents. I have worked with individuals who were experiencing burnout in volunteer roles or other things that they took on in their life that at one point they enjoyed very much and brought them a lot of joy and connection or passion. And then they had lost that along the way somewhere, or, it started to feel tedious. It started to feel more like a burden and unmanageable in those aspects. You can get burnout in a relationship. So I talked about, my former relationship, and it just, being an unhealthy space for me. And that was a part of the burnout that I was experiencing in that regard. I've also experienced burnout from things like my own health journey. So, trying to stay on track with an eating plan, or staying on track with my fitness plan or something. And then just having some times where I'm I'm tired of going through the motions with this, or it's not bringing the same satisfaction. So sometimes it's that experience to be like, okay, how do I need to retool this or rework this? Because it's not bringing about the same kind of care that it used to.
Right. Or the results at that point.
Right. Absolutely.
I love that, because that's one of the reasons, I always say, if you eat real food and focus on that, you're not really focusing on a diet plan. And it's really hard, because there's so much out there. And for those of us in the wellness world, we kind of know what works for us. But as soon as there's something new, we're kind of like, well, maybe I should check that out. And I know myself, as the curator at Living Healthy List, I try everything. So I can speak to someone about, this is what I tried. I tried this was my experience. And sometimes that actually I can understand. I see where for me, I could get burnt out very easily, trying all of these different things. And so I go back to what I've always said, eat real food.
Right.
Because I've gotten really exhausted by trying all of these different programs and products. And I can't imagine the amount of money that I spent too, now that I think about it. But I think those are all very good. Those are all areas where all of us have experience.
Absolutely.
And it's interesting, that again, we always think, burnout is strictly with our jobs.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, retired woman at 80, she's doing a lot of, I know someone she does a lot of volunteering, and she's starting to not be such a nice lady anymore. Yeah. Because she's always off and running and doing something for someone else. Not that that's a bad thing. Yeah. But I think you make a good point by setting boundaries.
Yeah, there has to be a balance to it, right? So you still have to be the biggest part of your life. Right. It's your life. Only you can live it. And so this, of course, brings the one big, the 2-letter word that no one likes to say, no. Right. How do you talk to people like your clients about saying no to stay within their boundaries? What are those conversations like? Yeah, it's, a part of it is, that piece of kind of figuring out, mindset and where we are when it comes to no. And for me, it might be a rephrasing of what no means. So I like to refer to whether I'm hearing no from someone else or I'm giving a no to someone, thinking of it as next opportunity. Right. So, and really working with clients in helping them understand that when we say no to something, we are either keeping the door open or opening the door for something that is going to bring us joy, that's going to bring us that passion. So really keying into what are the things that are going to bring about that happy, healthy self for you, and saying yes to those opportunities and next opportunity to those that don't. And knowing, and then a lot of work around those feelings of, kind of guilt or even shame that come with saying no and wanting. I work with a lot of clients who are like, well, I don't want to let another person down. And I was like, but if you say yes and you're overwhelmed and you're not able to fulfill that agreement in the way that they expected, are you really doing them a favor in the long run? And it's kind of like, well, no. Right. So the no. So say no initially. Yeah. Right. Say no now. And I think sometimes, especially what I see with what I do, sometimes no is not right now. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the timing piece, and is it something that you can support them in with, later or something to that effect, considering all of those pieces. But I think the biggest thing when it comes to saying no is stopping ourselves and slowing down just enough to really assess whether this is an opportunity that we want to add to our life. Or if it is, what is something that we may want to take off our plate for now so we can add this, this new piece, and really taking a moment to consider that. And I think we become very automatic in answering people. And part of it, I think, is, we're attached to technology now, that it's a very immediate response. And we think that that's what people expect. And so there's that worry that it's like, oh, if I take a moment to say, you know what, let me look at my schedule, let me look at what I have going on, and I'll let you know my answer in the next day or in 48 hours. But giving that time frame so that they know when they'll have an answer, but also giving yourself the space to truly assess whether this is something you can add to your life. That makes a lot of sense. It really does make sense. I know for me in the past, I would, sure, I'll do that. Sure, I can do that. Yeah. And when I started living Healthy List, all of a sudden those things started to add up. And maybe it was an hour here and an hour there, but
when I launched Living Healthy List, I needed to focus those hours on launching the business and what needed to happen there. And so I needed to step back because I was starting to feel, I didn't think of it as overwhelmed, but I was starting to feel resentful.
Yes.
That these people were expecting, because I've done something in the past that it was expected. And so there was that resentment. And it turns out that when I look at it and when I really thought about it, there really was nothing to be resentful, because people do, if you say yes once, sure, they think you'll say yes another time. But if they don't ask another time and you just automatically kind of, sure, I'll do that. Sure. It's kind of like you've always done it, kind of like that excuse people say, well, we've always done it this way.
Yes.
And sometimes that's great. And sometimes you need to change.
Yes.
And I guess change is part of that, the burnout, it's a change of mindset. It's a change of the way you live your life. So let's talk about that a little bit, like that mindset piece again.
Yeah. So the change piece is incredibly important. And I think, often when we get into that space of burnout, the first thing that we want to do is stop doing what it is that we think is causing the burnout. So, often, I see people, and even my own experience was like, oh, well, I'll leave, if I get a new job, if we're talking about the career aspect, then this will end. If I leave this volunteer position, then this will end. And we want to take a step back and really kind of think about, okay, how am I actually approaching stress in my life, regardless of where it's coming from? How am I actually responding to stress in my life? And thinking about, do I need to retool how that response is happening before we start to think about what is the change in environment that we need to make, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And so, you said respond. So now I'm thinking respond and reacting.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that for a second, because a lot of people think they're the same, but they're different.
They are very different. So yeah, that aspect, when we respond, we're actually doing it with some knowledge, with some intent, with some thinking behind it, where we kind of have we have a conscious decision that we are making when we respond. When we react, it is that intuitive piece. It is really like that physical body, that fight or flight is taking over, and you have less control over the decision in that moment when we actually react to something.
That's true. And I think more often when people react to something, there's a very negative connotation there.
Yes.
We don't want negativity.
Yeah, we don't want that necessarily. And sometimes a reaction is important because it keeps us safe in certain situations. So we don't want to, tamp down on our natural, ability to have reactions so much. But when it is something to the effect of like an email comes in and it's upsetting or it annoys you, that's a moment that a response is a really good place to be, as opposed to reaction.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. It's funny that you said email, because I was even thinking a few minutes ago, when it comes to, kind of my time, like I will respond to email. I try to do it once a day. Sometimes it's twice a day, once in the morning and once at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Because it can really trigger that negativity and that reaction instead of a good positive response. And I think email is always such a bad way to communicate. It is what it is.
Yeah. It's the world we're living in now. It's kind of like the quickest way. Text messages, I think, are similar, but yeah, if I can have a moment where I pick up the phone and chat with someone, or, possibly even see them in person to talk about something, or Zoom. And now that we have that ability, that's definitely my preferred.
I agree. I really like Zoom because it's almost like a real conversation,
Yes.
like in front of a person, because you can see the reaction on a person's face. We speak so much with the way we look, the way we smile at each other, the way we nod. You can't see that on an email or even on the phone. Well, I guess if you do FaceTime. Though I never seem to think of that.
Right?
So earlier we talked a little bit about incorporating some ways to kind of deal with burnout in our daily lives. So I'd like to touch back on, kind of circle back and talk about that a little bit more, because I think that those are really key in pieces of knowledge in order for us to, one, acknowledge that we do have some burnout happening, and really how to eliminate that, kind of nip it in the bud, if you may.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So there are a couple of key things. I refer to it as creating your own personal recovery formula. So what are things that you would put together that equal happiest, healthiest self, right? So a couple of the things that I recommend that everyone have as part of their daily routine, the first is play. So doing something that's playful, something that is fun, something that you enjoy. Play brings out like our creativity. It helps us be better problem solvers. It reduces stress. Like we don't play nearly enough as adults. And that is something that I am just, it's like, in addition to the mission of helping end the burnout cycle, I think getting every adult to play every day is another thing that I would love to just take on in that aspect. And play can look so many different ways. For me, it's a dance party. So it's that daily movement. It's a little bit of dance party, or it is singing really terrible songs to my dog and cat.
I think I've seen you do that on
It's happened. Yes, it's been recorded. I'm not going to do it in this moment, but
no,
y'all,
okay.
It's out there. Yeah. So if you follow me on Instagram at Dr. Kate Steiner, you can probably see some dancing for sure, but it's very possible that the singing to my cat or my dog is a part of that. But just laughing with other people is a form of play. So finding those playful moments, playing with your children, playing with your pets. If you come across a swing, sitting down and just taking a couple of swings on that and taking a deep breath. So play is one thing that I ask everyone to incorporate as part of their daily life for that burnout recovery. The second is figuring out what's on your comfort list. So your comfort list is a list of activities, people, songs, addition to music. It might be reading, foods, drinks, those kinds of things that just bring you a sense of calm, maybe a sense of like peace or harmony, or just that sense of balance. But it allows you to just take a breath and just kind of, okay, that feeling of comfort, when you think, okay, I'm going to comfort another person who is upset. What would I do for them? These are the things you do for yourself or that you'd want someone else to do for you. So some of the things on my comfort list are mac and cheese, number one food, comfort food for me. And I have it at least once a week in some variety. But I also love, hugs from my husband, snuggling with our pets, a nice cozy sweater, time in my hammock, getting out into some water, those kind of things. But you want to think of these things as kind of like quick ways that you can offer yourself some comfort. So I even include like the Hallmark Channel is a great thing on my comfort list. So watching I'm going
to have a sip of my tea. This is my comfort.
Yes. And the tea. So those hot drinks, but finding those things to incorporate in your life and then including them in your day to day as well. And then having those just some small micro steps throughout your day that include recovery. So it can include things like taking time to journal, affirmations. Gratitude is a great way of including some recovery, but it's just these moments of pause. It can be movement in your body. So like the dance break kind of brings all of those things in for me, but you can incorporate these things as part of routines that you already have. So my affirmations I have as a Post-it note on my mirror, and I read them while I brush my teeth. Mm-hmm. And so it's a really easy, like I'm going to be brushing my teeth twice a day anyway. So I might as well read my affirmations while I'm doing that. So thinking of ways that you can incorporate recovery practices into routines and things you're already doing, or things that you're doing, or when you have that first cup of coffee in the morning, just taking a moment to take a deep breath, really inhale the scent of the coffee exhaling, and then savoring that first sip and being mindful can actually bring about amazing recovery and just help us slow down just for that moment so that we can take pause throughout our day.
I like the idea of the micro steps or the micro moments.
Yes.
I think those are so important. And I think a lot of us may actually do a little bit of some of them,
Mm-hmm.
but don't realize that they're actually really helpful.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, when you talk about the coffee, I know my husband, sometimes he'll get up at 5 o'clock in the morning because he's like, coffee. Like, he just loves his coffee. And it's his way to kind of start his morning. He has his coffee. It's so strong. I can smell it in the other room and I'm awake. It wakes me up. But I can see that, looking at him in his career now, as opposed to even 10 years ago, there's a sense of calm. Yeah. And he's got this routine going where it may not have been so much 10 years ago, this morning routine where he gets up before me. Even if I'm awake, I stay in the bedroom. I do kind of my morning routine thing.
Yeah.
Gives us a little bit of space and kind of that. It's a nice way to start the day rather than, oh my God, I gotta go.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love that concept. So, Kate, for somebody who is in the midst of this burnout situation, obviously we just talked about a couple of things that they can do, but they're looking at this going, okay, yeah, sure. Right. I'm in the middle of this. What's the one thing I can do right now? Oh my God. What's the one thing that they could do?
Yeah. The one thing that you can do right now for yourself is start by naming your burnout. Attach that identity to it. Know that it is a natural part of being human. So there's no shame to that we all experience this. It is not something that we can avoid. While we can be more resilient to it, it is something that is going to happen within our lives. So attaching the identity of burnout to it helps us give a name to what's going on in our lives. And that helps us start to prepare a little bit differently for those things. And when we name it, I would say start looking at what is creating those burn events in your life. So that might be a 1 and 2. Name it and then start looking at what's creating those burn events so that you can think about preparing for those in a different way. And then really add one of those micro moments to your day. Think, what can I do in just 2 minutes that will help me feel a little more calm?
Oh, wow. I love it. That's perfect. I mean, it's simple. Anyone can do that. But I see how each of those 3 things can make a difference instantly.
Yeah.
So there's one last thing I want to talk about before we have to close is about your book, Feeling Crispy.
Yes.
It is a guide to burnout recovery. Do tell.
Yes. So feeling crispy is my verbiage for burnout. So it is what I refer to my burnout as. And when I'm feeling crispy is when I need to incorporate, like, okay, I need to observe my burnout a little bit better. I need to prepare for my burnout a little bit better. And I need to incorporate my recovery practices differently. So the concept of feeling crispy is, it has a visual with it. So if listeners and Denise, if you're familiar with the movie Christmas Vacation, there is the dinner scene in there with the turkey. And for those that haven't seen the movie, it's a dinner scene where everyone is sitting down for Christmas dinner. They have all of the fixings out on the table and this beautifully roasted turkey. And Clark Griswold, who is the main character, really likes like grand gestures. So he is very excited about carving into this turkey for the Christmas dinner. And he looks at Catherine, who prepared it, and he's like, oh, Catherine, if this turkey tastes half as good as it looks, we're all in for a big treat. And he kind of does the dun 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 dun, and he raises the tools above his head. And then he goes to carve the turkey, and it just explodes in steam. It just goes, pfft. And all that's left of this poor bird is the crispy skin. And for me, that's always now that I recognize it is my burnout, in that I'm working really, really hard to keep it all together on the outside, to look okay, to look like I'm, the well-roasted turkey. But if someone were to cut, just under my skin, I would explode in that steamy mess. And the bottom line is we're all overcooked turkeys when we're experiencing the burnout. And the book is really taking the model that I developed through my dissertation and putting it into a way that you can incorporate these strategies into your life. It is an ebook right now. It's available on Amazon. It's no more than a 90-minute read. And I wrote it intentionally to be a short read because I want it to be something that you can digest and incorporate into your life very quickly.
Which is perfect, because that's exactly what we love to do here, is to give people those tips and tricks that they can use right away. And Feeling Crispy is, it's such a great title. So.
I love it. Yeah. Feeling Crispy. Merchandise is on the way. So.
Aha, someone's got a merch store coming up.
Yes.
So, Dr. Kate, if you would, let everyone know where they can find you, contacts. I know you have a podcast of your own that you do.
I do.
Tell us about it.
Yeah. So my show is the From Burnout to Recovery show with Dr. Kate, and it drops every Tuesday morning. And I interview guests who have their own experience with burnout. And we just talk about those different perspectives and how it impacts our lives a little bit differently. But you also hear from them about how they found their path or are on their path to recovery from burnout. So lots of tips and tricks. And then every episode ends with a recovery moment, which is a guided reflection process that helps you give that space of calm. Those are less than 10 minutes. So really digestible piece. So when you aren't sure what to incorporate into your life for that moment to pause things, you can have a recovery moment at the end of the podcast. So, and that helps. And then I can be found online at all the social media platforms at Dr. Kate Steiner. And my website is drkatesteiner.com.
Awesome. And we'll make sure that all of that information is in the show notes. So everyone who is listening can connect with you and listen to your podcast.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, Kate. This has been really great. And still so many questions and so much more to talk about. So we'll just have to leave that for another conversation.
We will indeed.
Sounds lovely. Thank you again.
Thank you.
So for those of you who have been listening or watching, if you're watching the video, you have been listening or watching the Wonder Series that is sponsored by Living Healthy List. And we're here every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. So we will see you next week. Until then, I leave you with this: start wondering and start living.